Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Putting cattle on wheat has long been a tradition in Oklahoma in the fall and winter. Today we want to begin with some of the research underway on the wheat pasture at Marshall. SUNUP's Dave Deacon takes us there.
Here we are a couple miles away from Marshall, Oklahoma, and you guys are doing some research here.
Yes, this is what we call our Marshall Wheat Pasture Research Unit. This is a collaborative research program between the Animal Science Department, Plant and Soil Sciences, Ag Economics, and sometimes Entomology and Plant Pathology. Our focus over here is on wheat pasture, and more specifically, dual-purpose wheat pasture. This is our main cattle facility where we receive cattle, straighten these cattle out, get them ready to go to wheat pasture, and so they'll just be here for that initial receiving phase.
Talk a little bit about what goes into the receiving phase.
Well, let's say start with these cattle. Selection of cattle and what cattle you want to bring in. These steers originated on a ranch in north central Montana. They arrived on October 27, so we've had them about 23 days. These calves are fall-born, fall-weaned calves, of course. They're fairly young. The calving dates or calving interval for the larger cow herd is from about March 20 to June 20. So some of these calves are really pretty young. These cattle are BQA certified. They've had vaccinations for both respiratory disease and clostridial diseases. Their health has been very good so far. In fact, this is the third year we've had these cattle, and our experience every year has been that their health is excellent. From a standpoint of growth potential of these calves, upward to 90%, maybe almost all of them, would be what we would refer to as large frame steer calves. Number one, muscling, which is the highest score as far as feeder cattle scores for muscle thickness.
Now, you said you've had them for 23 days. What's the target for moving them to wheat?
The wheat dictates that.
Yeah.
You know, we would have liked to have had these cattle out much sooner. We've got a fairly good amount of wheat as far as how many cattle we can put out on each of those 18 pastures. And so wheat becomes the taskmaster development of that as far as when they leave this particular phase of the research project.
Okay. You want to go take a look at some of that wheat?
That'd be great.
Okay. And this is one of the 18 pastures that you're going to be moving the cattle to.
Correct. Looks green.
Yeah.
Looks pretty nice today. It's been a tough year as far as planting wheat. We've been very dry over here in general. A lot of the rains that we've had in the state have either gone north or turned off to the south and have missed us. In August we had about 2.6 inches of rain, September 0.8, and October 1.3. As of November 10, the drought monitor, we were considered to be a moderate drought area as far as the drought monitor. So it was a little bit tough to find the planting window because of the really dry soils we had. These pastures were planted on September 16, and Luckily, we had a little bit of rain last Monday morning, and actually had about an inch of rain Monday or 2 days ago. So that's the latest rain that we've had here. So I brought a couple of props as far as talking about, well, how much wheat do we have? That basketball, if it's fully inflated, is 9 1/4 inches in diameter. That softball is a 16-inch softball, which means it has a diameter of about 5 inches. And so it's hard to tell the height today because of the wind, but there's places where we've got close to 7 to 8 inches of wheat forage.
Why is Oklahoma such a great place for cattle to graze wheat like this?
Well, one of the really unique characteristics about wheat pasture is it's really, like a lot of things, it's a matter of timing. Most of the cow herds in the United States are spring calving herds. So calves are weaned in the fall, and so if those calves are in Montana, like the ones that we will be placing on wheat here, the native pastures are turning dormant. They're going to become really, really low in quality. They're just not at all suitable for growing cattle at any respectable rate or moderate rate of gain. Of course, their winters are going to be a lot harsher than ours, and so about their only option is to put cattle in a backgrounding facility and feed them a mixed diet or ship them somewhere else. And so wheat pasture in Oklahoma and the southern Great Plains are a very unique resource because, again, it comes at a time of the year when most of the nation's pastures are deteriorating, becoming dormant. I tell my students in Stocker Feedlot that you could be sitting in a sale barn in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and know when it rained in the wheat area without ever seeing a weather report. It's that dramatic sometimes as far as the effect on the market for those cattle.
What are some of the things that you're going to be watching out for moving forward as the cattle are out here?
Once we get cattle out of receiving program onto wheat, our main health problem is bloat, a little bit of polioencephalomalacia, which is particularly, I think, more prevalent for young calves like we're going to have, so we'll stay vigilant about looking for that. But bloat is the major health problem with cattle on wheat pasture. Some years we don't have hardly any, other years we'll have quite a bit. So it's a lot of keeping your fingers crossed as far as weather and growth of wheat, etc.
Do you mind if we come back out throughout the research process and kind of catch up with you?
Oh, that'd be great. It'd be interesting to look at, again, how the pastures develop, how the cattle develop, and actually we'll take these cattle through a short graze out period over here, so they'll be here after the fall winter grazing. They'll be here to about April 20.
Well, great.
From that point, they'll go on to the feedlot.
Okay, well, we'll check back with you throughout that time.
You bet.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. Thanksgiving is a great time to remember our blessings. One of those blessings comes in the form of rain. The winter outlook from the Climate Prediction Center that Gary McManus showed last week gives Oklahoma an increased chance of above average precipitation. Precipitation, that wonderful term for rain, snow, and ice. We mostly love rain, like snow, and hope to miss any ice. This winter outlook covers the months of December, January, and February. The outlook for above average precipitation is primarily based on strong El Nino conditions that have set up in the eastern Pacific Ocean closer to South America as we begin the winter of 2015. Along the equator and across the Pacific Ocean, a system of moored buoys records sea surface and subsurface ocean temperatures. It is a series of buoys maintained by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that have been in place since the 1980s. And those buoys and other monitors are reporting that the sea surface temperatures are approaching previous highs of 3 degrees above neutral Celsius temperature. This is the red band along the equator running from South America west to the mid-Pacific. For an El Nino, 3 degrees Celsius above neutral conditions places this winter's El Nino up with two of the strongest El Nino winters, those that occurred in 1983 and 1998. A graph of sea surface temperatures since 1982 shows warmer temperatures in red and cooler ocean temperatures in blue. This graph also shows how far above or below neutral the sea surface temperatures ranged. The impact El Niños have on weather in the southwestern United States is depicted on a globe centered on North America. Warmer waters in the eastern Pacific carry moisture across the southwest. Typically during strong El Niños, that moisture carries on into Oklahoma. Higher moisture patterns can also bring cooler air temperatures. Northern parts of the U.S. are typically warmer and drier than average. And all of that brings us back to the Climate Prediction Center's outlooks for December, January, and February. We have elevated chances of being above average in precipitation and low chances of being below average. The outlook for northern U.S. states is for drier and warmer conditions. For temperature, even with the El Nino, Oklahoma falls into the equal chances category. There is an increased chance of below average temperatures to the south, but for us, no clear temperature trend. Thanks for joining me for this edition of the Mesonet Weather Report. I hope you and your family have a lot you feel thankful for this year.
There was some big news that came out of Argentina earlier this week, and it could impact the wheat markets. Kim, let's talk about the president-elect of Argentina.
Well, he's promised to do away with the export taxes for the grains in Argentina. You look at wheat, that's 23% tax on wheat, a 25% export tax on corn, and a 35% export on soybeans. Reports are that the producers have been holding back their commodities. One, for inflation, it's a hedge against inflation, but two, all through the election, the president-elect has said that he would do away with these taxes, so they're holding off so that we can get export demand and then get higher prices. Now that on those soybeans, they're talking about they've got a third of the last year's record crop in storage. They've been storing those in silo bags, by the way, and I thought that's pretty interesting on how they're doing that. The word on the street is if that tax done away with, that the wheat acres could increase as much as 31% next year. We'll just have to wait and see what happens, but it looks like it's coming on. But that should already be factored in the market.
Okay, so all of this news really may not have an effect on the wheat price.
Well, I think it'll have some impact. There's always, they anticipate, but you don't know what's going to happen, what degree it's going to happen. So I think it's been factored in to a certain degree, but it will still, at least on the short run, have a negative impact.
Let's talk about some of the prices that are factoring into this.
Well, if you look at where prices are now on wheat, they're the lowest since July of 2010. You look at corn, July of 14, they hit this bottom, came back up, but you go back to July 2010 for corn prices to get this low. Soybeans, you got to go back to 09 and 10. They were down in 09, came up just a little bit and then back down in 10. Canola, Canola prices are just low now, and there is no bid for canola right now in Oklahoma, either new crop or old crop. But if you look at the canola futures and Canadian canola prices, they're up about $1.10, $1.15 from harvest. So our harvest price was around $6. That'd get them up to around $7 to $7.25.
There's some cattle out on wheat right now. Let's say the wheat price stays where it is, or where it is, or possibly drops. Is there a point where cattle producers, wheat producers say, you know, I'm going to give up on the grain option of this wheat, I'm just going to feed out cattle?
Well, I think this year's decision on whether the graze are out or not is going to be mostly dependent upon the cattle price. Wheat prices are relatively low. They could go a little lower, but I think the big risk is in cattle prices, because wheat prices are already down near the floor. Right. Cattle prices, they're on a downtrend. We know that over the next few years they're going to continue lower. It's just how they're going to do that. So one, the decision is do you have wheat pasture to graze? Two, do you already have the cattle on hand? And three, what's the risk that price is going lower?
And all of this decision needs to be decided before first hollow still.
Well, I think that right now, if they've got the cattle, they're going to keep them till the January, February time period. Then that's the time that they're going to have to say, do I carry them on or do I part company with them?
Okay, but right now the market doesn't, or the wheat market, there's no indication either way.
I don't think the wheat market will be a factor in your cattle graze out decision right now.
Okay, Kim Anderson, grain marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
On this week's Cow-Calf Corner, I wanted to visit with producers across the state about a new piece of legislation that affects the entire livestock business. It's called a Veterinary Feed Directive, and it's going to have an impact on how cow-calf producers and other livestock producers would feed medicated feeds to their livestock. To help us better understand this new piece of federal legislation coming from the Food and Drug Administration, I've asked Dr. Rod Hall, our state veterinarian, to visit with us today and perhaps bring us a little more up to date and explain more about what this really means. So, Dr. Hall, can you kind of give us a rundown of what the Veterinary Feed Directive really means?
You bet, Glenn. I'd like to start out by just saying that the reason for this is the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, they have evidence and they believe that a lot of the antibiotic resistance problems that we're starting to see may be caused from overfeeding of antibiotics in animals. I think I don't know that that's been confirmed positively, but the fact of the matter is they believe it, and a lot of the public, the people that buy our food, believes that. So it just stands to reason that we would want to make some changes that would assure the producers that we are doing everything we can. So this is really brought on by the antibiotic resistance problem. The Veterinary Feed Directive is actually, it's a piece of paper that a producer must get from a veterinarian, similar to a prescription. It's not exactly a prescription, but similar, for that producer to buy any feed that has antibiotics mixed in with it. The maximum length of time the VFD can be written for is 6 months. The veterinarian has to put the amount of that feed that can be purchased, what the dose is, how many animals are going to be treated. So it's not just an open-ended product. It really truly is going to require the producer to communicate with his veterinarian and get all this documented. January 2017, all of these medically important antibiotics will have to have this Veterinary Feed Directive. So the producer is going to have to work with their veterinarian. If a producer does not already have a veterinarian that they work with, that they have a veterinary client-patient relationship, they need to start developing that relationship now, because getting this Veterinary Feed Directive documented and to the supplier is going to take a few days. So the producer won't be able to just wake up one morning and say, I need to go to the feed store and buy some feed with aureomycin in it to prevent anaplasmosis. They'll have to have that Veterinary Feed Directive for that.
Can you go ahead and perhaps step through how a producer would go about getting a medicated feed in this situation where he's concerned about anaplasmosis.
The producer needs to contact the veterinarian. Together they make a decision that feeding chlortetracycline in the mineral or in a top dress is the best way to prevent anaplasmosis in the producer's herd. And then the veterinarian will need to, fill out all the documentation, give a copy to the producer, and then the producer will give that copy to the feed store or the feed supplier, and he'll be able to purchase that then.
Okay. There are other feed ingredients, let's call them, that are commonly used in the cow-calf industry, and I'm thinking of such things as ionophores or even some of the coccidiostats for the prevention of coccidiosis. What about those?
Those are not covered under this. As I say, the Veterinary Feed Directive is targeted at the medically important antibiotics. So the ionophores, the dewormers that we use in cattle, for instance, the beta agonists that we use, those are not used in humans, so they are not covered. So there will be no change in the way that a producer can buy or use those.
And we've put on the SUNUP website a couple of links to those government type pamphlets that tell producers more details about this veterinary feed directive. So just go to sunup.okstate.edu, look under show links, and you can find out more information. Thank you, Dr. Hall, and we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
We have a Farm Bill update now with Eric DeVeest, an extension economist here at OSU. And Eric, those ARC payments have been released. Give us an idea of kind of what's happening right now and some background on the ARC payment system.
Okay, yeah, so the 2014 payments were released, the amounts were released recently. And for those that don't remember, ARC is ag risk coverage at the county level. And so what that means is your payments are based on a marketing year average price, which is computed nationally, and county level yields for your county. And those are going to be compared to some formula numbers, benchmark, and a guarantee number.
And it's quite a complex formula that kind of eventually ends up with a payment, right?
Yeah, it takes a little algebra to get there. So we start with a 5-year yield history for that county, and we're going to throw the low and the high out, and we're going to average the remaining 3. And then we're going to start with 5 years of prices, and we're going to throw the low and the high out again, average them, and then we multiply those two together, and we get the benchmark revenue for a given county. Then we multiply that by 86% and we get the county guarantee. So anytime when the county yield times the county price, or the marketing year average price, excuse me, is less than that, that will trigger a payment. Up to 10% of the benchmark revenue, but it cannot exceed 10% of the benchmark revenue.
So it's quite a complex formula, needless to say, but you've been taking a look at the payments kind of received around Oklahoma. Give us an idea of what the range is.
Yeah, so on the upper end, we're going to look at the corn ARC payments in the Panhandle and in the very northwest corner of the state. So Texas and Cimarron County came in over at $100 an acre each. Beaver came in about 88, Harper at about 95, and Ellis at about $95 an acre. And those are the upper end. Now, very, very few counties in the state got anywhere near that amount for their payments for any crop. Those were the extreme. The most common payment amount is 0 for any given crop across the state.
Now, in terms of county by county differences, there may be a little bit of confusion to sort out there for viewers. If you and I are neighbors, I may get a payment and you may not. Explain that. Okay,
so again, it all comes down to what your county yield is. So if we're separated by the county line and we're looking at my county average, you can get a payment and I might not because of what the county yield was. I might have personally had a disaster that year, and but the ARC payment ARC program is not going to give me any payments for that. So I pulled out a few counties to demonstrate that. Harper County got a really nice payment, as I mentioned earlier, almost $95 an acre. But they started out with an Olympic average yield of 179 bushels, where just to the southeast of there we have Woodward County, and they only had a 54 bushel average. So in 2014, Harper County, its yield was under its long-term average, where Woodward's was above it, and so Harper gets a payment, Woodward doesn't. Worked out the same thing, soybeans in Kingfisher and Logan counties, side by side. Both of the counties are going to get a payment, and both of them hit their maximum payment level. It's just that Kingfisher had a lot higher benchmark revenue to begin with, and so ends up with $40.49 an acre, where Logan, even though it hit the max payment, it's only $17.18. And there are other extremes, like grain sorghum, comparing Grady with Garvin County. One gets a payment, one doesn't. Same thing with wheat, like Okfuskee and Okmulgee. Okfuskee gets a payment, Okmulgee doesn't.
And it's all based on the 2014 crop year?
Yeah,
or
so
marketing year?
it's based on that county average yield versus that marketing year average price, and we're going to compare that back to that revenue guarantee. And so some counties get there, some don't. And so crop by crop, if we look at it, for example, wheat, the price was about 90.7% of our average, our 3-year average price, which meant that the yield had to come in below 86%. It would have to come in at 81.3% in order to trigger a payment for your county. Where grain sorghum, it was the opposite of that, and you actually could come in at 104% yield and still get a payment.
Okay, a lot to sort out there, but thanks for the lesson. And for people who want to learn more, we have a link for you on the SUNUP website, sunup.okstate.edu. That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime online at sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone. And remember, Oklahoma Ag starts at sunup.